Can you really make a fire with a few pieces of wood and a piece of paracord? Here we go. I'm Doug North, and on my channel I show you how to make, use, and appreciate interesting items from the past. Today, I'll show you how to make a bow drill friction fire. Okay, I've got everything we need here to make a fire using the bow drill method. Let's take a quick look at what those things are. First, we have a bow. It's a curved piece of hardwood that is roughly the length of my arm. I've got a hearth board and spindle piece. Both of these are eastern white pine. Many woods work. I hope to cover that in a different video. A length of cord, in this case it's paracord, I would say about 4 feet. A small piece of hardwood to use as the bearing block, a square of birch bark to use as the ember catch, and an overlooked part, appropriate tinder material to make a tinder bundle. Let's begin at the beginning, which is the tinder bundle. This is often overlooked, especially by beginners, but it can be heartbreaking to go through this entire process to create an ember only to find that you haven't prepared a tinder bundle to bring that ember to flame. Any good tinder bundle is made up of a variety of dry, fine materials, some coarse, some medium, and some fine. I have heavy grasses, finer grasses, and then some very fluffy flower tips. I'm creating what approximates a bird's nest, and that's what these are often called. So this is the coarser material, and it will be on the outside of the tinder bundle. Next, I'm going to take some of this finer grass, and I'm going to work it, break it down. We're going to put the finest material in the very center. These flower heads, again, I'm going to kind of crush them up. I'm going to make a bit of a depression to hold that ember once I put it in there. Eventually, we'll be putting a coal in there and blowing it into flame. And that center portion is going to get very hot. And we want to make sure that it isn't so thin that the coal just burns right through and drops out. With the tinder bundle made, we can set it aside somewhere safe and begin working on the rest of the bow drill kit. Let's start with the bow itself. I've selected this curved piece of hardwood. It's about 1 inch in diameter, somewhat larger than my thumb, and it has that nice natural bow shape. We're going to need to carve a couple of notches into this to keep the cord in place. The first one will be at the far end, and I will do a stop cut straight down and then a slanted cut into that stop cut. It just needs to be deep enough to catch the cord. So something like the diameter of the cord is plenty. The string will be going from this end to this end. And so a second notch down here is helpful. It's the same sort of thing. A stop cut toward the center of the piece and then a slanting cut down toward that stop cut. With the 2 notches cut, we can tie on the string. At the top end, you can do any kind of knot you like. I'm just going to do 2 half hitches. So I'm going to bring the string over, pull it tight, bring it over and bring it through that loop that I just made. The knot up here isn't important, just so long as it's secure. So that's what 2 half hitches looks like. With the top end secured, it's time to do the knot at the lower end. Be aware that you're going to be tying and untying this knot very frequently to adjust the tension on the string. That's why I like to use a clove hitch for this knot. I'm just going to loop the rope over and then again to make this X shape, and then bring the tail or tag end directly underneath that X. As the string works loose, you can grab the loose end and ratchet it back and forth in order to tighten the string up again. With the bow done, we can turn our attention to the hearth. You'll hear a lot about needing to use a hardwood for the spindle and a softwood for the hearth, or the other way around. I don't really subscribe to that. The whole object here will be to make a pile of hot wood dust, and if the 2 materials are the same hardness, I think you've got the best chance of producing the most dust. In terms of thickness, I like something that's about as thick as my thumb. And in terms of length, something between 8 and 12 inches is usually appropriate. If it's got any roundedness to it, you might want to take the time to just make sure that it's flat enough to sit squarely on the ground without rocking back and forth. This one's pretty much ready to go. Next, let's move on to shaping the spindle. I've got a roughly cylindrical piece of wood here. It doesn't need to be perfectly round in cross section, but if it's at all oval or has any real square edges, you're going to want to take a knife and just clean those edges up. Okay, and that should do it. Now we need to make two pointed ends on the spindle, one at the bottom and one at the top. The one at the bottom will be a rather short point, whereas the one at the top is going to be a rather long one. I'm just going to use a thumb-assisted cut here in order to make a fairly sharp taper, so just bring this down to a point. Okay, now we can switch to the other side. This is going to be a longer point, and the reason for that will become apparent later.
And here is the completed spindle.
We've got one more piece left to do, and that is the bearing block. I've got a piece of hardwood here, it's oak, and it's been cut down to a size that will fit well into my hand. All that we need to do to make this a suitable bearing block is to use the tip of the knife to carve a small divot into the center. The safest way to go about that is to find a block of some sort to rest your work upon, hold it with your non-dominant hand, choke up on your knife, and then use the tip to make shortcuts as you rotate the piece underneath. And in this way, you can create a nice circular divot that will hold the top of the bow drill spindle.
The finished bearing block looks like this.
Grab a piece of bark or something similar to serve as an ember catch. A thick leaf also works fine, or a thin wood shaving. With the spindle and hearthboard done, it's time to create a divot in the hearthboard. Place the spindle against the edge of the hearthboard and note where the edge of the spindle is. On that spot, make a little dimple. That tells you where you need to make this divot. With the spot located, you can now use your knife in the same way you used it on the bearing block. Choke up a little bit on the tip and rotate it to create a small divot in the surface of the hearthboard. When it's deep enough, test fit the bottom of the spindle in that divot. That should be great. We're nearly ready to begin the burn-in process. Place the hearthboard directly in front of you and place your non-dominant foot on top of it. Place the bearing block out in front of you and have the spindle and bow in your hand. To load the spindle into the bow, place the bow in your dominant hand and hold it by its string. Take the upper sharp point of the spindle and place it onto the string so that you make this sort of shallow zigzag formation. Next, rotate the spindle forward so it captures the underside of the string, and then tip it up. And this might require some force and the use of two hands. As you can see, this places the spindle on the center of the bow outside of the string.
Here's a different angle. Point of the spindle to the right, then forward, then up. Use both hands to get it all the way in. Let's review the mechanics of bowing. Put the spindle in the hearthboard, put the bearing block on the top, rest your shin against the inside of your wrist, and begin bowing in a very even manner, keeping the bow parallel with the ground. Try to use the full length of the cord. Let's move on to the burn-in process.
We're not yet trying to start a fire. What we're trying to do is seat the spindle to the hearthboard. We can tell that we're finished if the entire base of the spindle has been burned. Seeing smoke and dark powder around the divot is a good sign. As you can see, the entire base of the spindle has been charred, telling us that we've properly seated the spindle to the hearthboard. With the hearthboard burned in, our next step is going to be to cut a V-notch in the side of the hearthboard. The purpose of this notch is to collect all of this hot wood dust that we're generating in the process of bowing. Our initial goal will be to fill up that notch with hot wood dust. With some additional bowing, The wood dust will come in contact with the point at which the spindle meets the hearth board and should ignite. Whether you choose to cut the notch on the side close to you or further away is a matter of preference. I'm going to do it on the side close to me. The end of the notch should not quite reach the middle of the divot. And it should be about the angle of a slice of pizza. If you cut a pizza into 8 pieces, that makes a 45-degree angle. So that would extend from there, out to there, and out to there. To cut a notch in the hearth board, I usually make a series of stop cuts. This makes it a little safer and easier to control. I start with a stop cut right in the center on the top. So you want to rock the knife back and forth. Then on the side, rock the knife, and then on the bottom, because this will be going all the way through the board. Once that stop cut is well established, I then cut away from me toward that stop cut. And then I'd use a slight push cut using my thumb to prevent the knife from going far. I push the knife away from me and go toward the stop cut from the opposite side. So once that's done on the top, I repeat it on the side and the bottom. Away from me, push cut, away from me, push cut. And now I repeat the entire process until I've reached the desired depth. At long last, we're ready to try and make an ember with our bow drill kit. This is the perfect time to make some final adjustments just to make sure that our effort is well used. You could check the tension of the string on your bow. You could make the top of your spindle a little sharper so that it's not rubbing. Remember, we want to reduce friction at the top and maximize friction at the bottom. Make sure your tinder bundle is handy. Finally, I'm going to take a little bit of pine resin that I collected and put it in the bearing block divot. Just going to scoop it up with my knife and press it into that divot. Even though this stuff is very sticky, when it heats up, it will help lubricate the top. Initially, all we're going to be trying to do is fill this notch up with hot wood dust that collects there. Once that dust starts to smoke on its own, that tells us that we have an ember. And at that point, we can stop bowing and start paying attention to the ember only.
Let's go for an ember here.
Here's the dust from the hearth board, and here's the ember. See how it just looks like dust, but it's actually smoky on its own? Got to protect it from the wind. So this I need to drop into the tinder bundle. So as you can see, you've got quite a bit of time. It's a good time to fuss with your tinder bundle a little bit. Loose stuff here, a little bit of cattail fluff that I found this morning. It's all going to get dropped right into that spot. Okay, I'm gonna go for it. Just going to drop that ember right into the middle of the tinder bundle. Make sure that there's fuel touching it, especially light fuel. Close fuel around it. Hold it up. And provide air. Slowly at first, and as it begins to smoke more, I can blow harder. Here we go. Bow drill friction fire. I hope this has proved useful to you. If you found this video helpful, I'd really appreciate a like. Consider hitting that subscribe button and leave any comments that you have down below. Until next time, I'm Doug North. Take care.